So you can't depend on your authority because the authority only goes so far. People only want to follow people that they respect, they like, and they trust. And so I think for somebody that's been a high performer, it's it's a change in mindset. So if you've been a top salesperson, now all of a sudden it's no longer about you; it's about the team. 80% done by somebody else is better than you doing it. And so part of your role is to teach and train, coach people to be able to do those things. I think learning is a huge component. Leaders are learners.
Keith, welcome to the Made Leader podcast. I'm so glad to have you on today.
Thank you, Jen. Very nice to meet you. Very excited to be here.
Glad to have you. And Keith, for the listeners, can you introduce yourself?
Absolutely. My name is Keith Willis, and I am the president and founder of Core Management Training. We focus on making managers better leaders and work primarily within life sciences and pharmaceuticals.
And we're going to talk all about it. And you work with sales leaders,
I
correct?
do. I do a lot of work with sales leaders.
Okay, so I know it's not just sales leaders, but we're going to hone in on that a little bit today. But before we dive into your specialties, Keith, what is the biggest lie that we tell people about leadership?
I think one of the biggest lies we tell people about leadership is we give them a title and they expect the title is going to be the thing that makes it work for them. I know when I became a new manager, I'm a new district manager, and people will do what you tell them to do because you're the leader, but it's more about your influence, your ability to hold people accountable, and to lead the way. I remember when I was, and this is ages ago, I was working at McDonald's and I had a manager that he was very tough. But one of the things I learned is I loved to close with him because he would roll up his sleeves and he would get involved. He would help us mop the floors, clean the dishes, do all the things. In fact, Jen, I don't even know when he got all of his work completed because he was focused on helping us. But we always got out early. And what that taught me as a leader, part of your role is to roll up your sleeves and help your team succeed. And if you do that, you're going to be far more successful than if you don't. So you can't depend on your authority because the authority only goes so far. People only want to follow people that they respect, they like, and they trust.
Yeah, it's all about influence. And I think that's what gets lost, especially as you step into leadership, right? You think it's about authority, the title, but
Yeah.
no, truly, you need to really help your team succeed. And I know it was lost on me as a new leader. So I imagine many others. So when you think of sales in general, so any type of sales, you can talk about pharma sales, but there's the people that are just great salespeople. And there's the sales leader who could also be great salespeople. Um, but what makes the great salesperson different or similar to the sales leader, a great sales leader?
So I guess one way I look at it is the similarities between a great salesperson and a great sales leader is they like to move the ball forward. And what I mean by that is I have a kind of a mantra that leaders lead. And what that means is when you lead the way. Everybody follows you. This is what we're going to do. So the ideals, you push the team. So a salesperson does that also, where they're pushing their customer forward. They're challenging them. They're getting them to move a deal forward, whatever that looks like. So I think that's where they're very similar. The biggest difference between a sales leader and a salesperson is that salesperson it's individual, like playing tennis. You're on the tour, it's you win or lose based on what you do or you don't do. As a sales leader, you win or lose based on what the team does, and you lead through others. And I think one of the challenges that sales leaders have sometimes, they may be good with individual people coaching, providing feedback, but they forget you're not leading individuals. You are, but you're leading an entire team. It's together everyone achieves more. It's not each individual person. So you have to figure out, how do I get the team to move forward? And those skills are very different. So as a salesperson, I can afford to be very selfish, self-centered. I'm sure you've seen fair share of sales prima donnas. They're great, but people find them to be very difficult to work with. And in the home office, or people that associate with them on the marketing team, it's like, oh my goodness, but they're bringing in so much revenue to the organization that they get tolerated. But as a sales leader, if you do that, they're going to find the door for you, because you have to enable the team. You have to be able to work with other departments, whether it be sales, marketing, operations, your peers, and other people to move the team forward, solve problems, those type of things. And so I think for somebody that's been a high performer, it's a change in mindset. So if you've been a top salesperson, now all of a sudden it's no longer about you, it's about the team. And then the other tendency can be is that because you are a great performer, then you think you can be a super rep. Yeah, 8 to 10 people. You can't be a super rep to 8 to 10 people. It's just not going to work. You're just not going to be effective, and then your team's just not going to perform at the level that they need to, because they're not going to feel empowered.
What do you say? It's super rep?
Yeah, super rep. Yep. The manager takes on the role of the super rep. I'm going to close all of the deals. I'm going to go and fix everything, because I have the skill. I know how. They want to make everybody a mini version of them, versus making each person the best version of themselves.
Well, I did find that sometimes. So my team was like kind of uh, well, we did sell some things, but if a customer was angry, they always wanted to see the manager, right? Like, how often does
Yes.
that happen where you're like, oh, let me see the manager. And then the manager goes in and you're like the super rep or the fixer,
Yeah. Right.
right? Like,
Exactly. Yep.
what advice do you have for leaders when that real situation happens? A customer's upset and you need to deal with it. Do you recommend? I know it's different with every scenario, but how do you get leaders to untangle themselves from always being that person who's going to go in and fix it?
Yeah, I think there's two pieces to this. So I think there's the customer service piece, that if you have customers that are happy, you have to do what you can to build that relationship. And I also think that it's good as a sales manager that you have relationships, especially with those most important customers, because customers need to feel like they're important, they're valued. But I think that relationship should look a little different. It's that you're talking to somebody that's senior, that has access to more information, that can help you with some other things. So I think that part of the sales manager is important. But I think from a day to day, maybe you're in, with a representative, maybe there's a tendency to always take over calls, tell people do it this way versus that way. Maybe you're not doing enough role play. In other industries, the closing sequence, the representative is failing, and they know the manager is going to be there to fill in, or do the close, or save the deal. There's been an issue. The best way to do that is take a step back. Maybe it's more of a coaching conversation, having a conversation about what needs to happen, or what the gaps are, role playing, practicing, getting that person up to speed, and then have them do it. 80% done by somebody else is better than you doing it. And so part of your role is to teach and train, coach people to be able to do those things.
Yes, definitely. Because I think sometimes too, I think even in my experience, at least, salespeople just automatically go with, you need to come in. Right. So it's not even the
Yeah.
leader stepping in saying, let me in. It's like,
Yeah.
no, you really need to. Because I have noticed in my time in sales, there are many people, it's very urgent. Right. You need, like,
Yes.
it's just that urgency. And you're like, really? Is it urgent?
You're
Do more
right.
people really need to go out to do this? Because it's not always the leader, right? And so I love that coaching them. What would it look like for you to respond to this, right? Instead of pulling me in every single
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And
It's
when you feel
hard.
like, it is.
Oh, I was going to say, yeah, it's hard because what you're trying to do is work yourself out of a job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let your team run without you,
Right.
right?
That's right.
Which makes people nervous.
Yes.
Because truly, if you're a good leader, you're not going to work yourself out of a job,
Right.
right? Like, you're
Yeah.
going to really be needed there, but it does feel very uncomfortable. If you're
Yes.
not doing it, then are you really doing your job? Um, okay, so when we go back to the team piece, because that is a reality of sales teams, everyone has their individual goals, right? So of competing, and that sometimes it's this friendly competition, like, "Hey, I'm gonna beat you this quarter," or that type thing. But how do you bring the team together? Because as you said, as a sales leader, you get everyone pumped up individually, but they still need to, if you look at it a different way, compete against other sales teams in the department, right? How do you make that switch in your head from that individual mindset to, hey, the team needs to win together?
Yeah, so for a manager, it's so important because the more of your people are doing well, the higher your bonus is going to be. If you only have if you only have a couple of people who are doing well and everybody isn't, one of the gripes managers have oftentimes is that their top reps are making more money than they are. The best
Mhm.
managers get more leverage off of their people than anybody else. It was interesting because when I started in sales, at the time, the way the compensation program was set up, the team won a team award. So if your district finished within the top 10, there was a top 10 trip. And I remember when I started, my territory was, I think, like 500 something out of 640 reps. So I wasn't doing very well at all. And I was new. I mean, I took a
Yeah.
territory, I sold twice as much product as the rep before in the same amount of time, but was still ranked near the bottom. But because the team did so well, we got additional bonus. And so it was set up that way. And then over time, they switched the compensation where you needed to rank a certain, top 10% or whatever that was to win the trip. So ironically, I finished 3 of 640 and never won a sales trip. I won district rep of the year, but at the time, the compensation programs were different. So there's advantages to that because set up that way, then the team thinks in terms of we all need to do well for everybody to do well. But it doesn't change that the top managers get more of their representatives to do better. I had a sales manager when I was a district manager, and her thing was around best practices. And so we would take the whole management team would go into a district and spend the day, and we would do a best practices dinner. And so her whole mantra was, we have all of the strategies, all of the tactics and things. Your job as a sales manager is to figure out how to out execute your peer. So, in other words, her challenge to us was prove you're a better manager. We all have the
Mm.
same tools, the same resources. And like a lot of industries, the company tells you what you need to do to be successful. They tell you how many calls a day to make, they tell you what the messaging should be, what resources you should use, what money you should spend, what the budget should look like. And the people that follow that most closely generally are the people that do the best. So when you think of it from that way, manager's role is not to necessarily have their representatives compete with each other, but they should be competing with themselves. If you can get somebody to think about, if I can sell more today than I sell tomorrow, then I'm going to be better for it. And if you get everybody focused on that and rally around best practices and helping everybody, then the team in itself can win. And that helps everybody because if you're, let's just say, you're a representative that sits in the middle of the rankings of your district, but you're in a district that has strong performance and promotional opportunities come along or other opportunities come along, they're going to look at that person. They're going to say, well, they work for a pretty good manager and they've got some decent performance, even though they're not a top rep. You're going to more likely get that opportunity versus somebody that, you're the only representative that's doing well in that district and the rest of the people are near the bottom of the stack. Well, who wants to listen to you? Because they're going to wonder, well, what's the leadership that you've been getting? What are the lessons that you have to, that you've learned? And why aren't you helping your peers be successful? So I think the manager does have a lot of leverage points and think of it as challenge each individual person to be the best version of themselves.
Yeah, I like that thought, just competing against yourself and putting it that way instead of against each other. I'd say it was mostly a friendly competition back in the day, but yeah, it was definitely it was there, it was strong. And I
Yeah.
think sometimes, I don't know, I think it led to short-term decision making or urgency when it didn't need to be urgent, but, when your money's riding on it, that's your livelihood,
Yeah.
makes a difference
So I
a little bit.
established a Top Gun award. And what that was a plaque that was created, and the number one sales rep would get the plaque for the month, and their name would be engraved on that plaque. So you had 12 sections for, the 12 months. You could be a representative and not won the Top Gun award for any month, but in the month of December, if you were the number one sales representative for the year, you would get that plaque. And so it created some friendly competition for the team because everybody would be waiting to see who's going to win the plaque for the month. But the ultimate goal was to figure out who's going to get the plaque for the year. So that created some friendly competition and smack talking and all the things that go on. But ultimately, it's something that our team had that other teams didn't have. And you can still rally the team around, culture. We have a great team. Everybody's doing well.
Yeah, and like you said, competition's not a bad thing, right? I mean, like, you need a little competition, for some people, like, that is their motivator,
Yeah.
right? So,
Yeah.
especially, I think people in sales gravitate maybe more towards competition, but like you said, it's not a bad thing. Um, you know, one thing that's always, I guess in my experience, has been a challenge is identifying sales leaders from the pool of salespeople. Right? Because I find, and I'll tell a story that I reported to someone, they were new sales, big groups, new sales, and he was amazing, like he top salesperson. Eventually got into a high level leadership role, and it felt like it was just he was not in his strengths. He wasn't able to
Mm,
sell. He was, paperwork, bureaucracy, politics, internal stuff, right? Because
mm.
I think a lot of salespeople can stay out of all that noise because
Yeah.
they're out doing their thing. And so I have two questions. I'll save the second one for after you answer this. But how do you look in your pool of salespeople and say that person can be? I'm seeing qualities of that person that could be promoted into leadership.
Yeah, that's a tough one. So many companies don't have a systemic process. I think part of that is because of downsizings and developmental programs that were put together, then no one gets promoted because there's nowhere for them to go. I think having competency models, clearly helps, and skill models around what a manager looks like, providing people developmental opportunities, whether it be mentoring a new representative that's coming into the organization, giving one of your strong performers an opportunity to mentor, and then you sit, from a sideline perspective, provide feedback, provide coaching, see what that looks like, see what that interaction is, get feedback from the person that's being mentored to see what's working, what's not working, and then begin to uncover, developmental plan type things, and also have that person, sit beside you on some of the managerial things that you do, for example, around business planning or doing staff meetings. When I was a training leader, I quit running staff meetings. I would delegate that to one of my direct reports. Now, obviously, they would have to have a conversation with me around what the meeting was going to look like, but they would go out to people on the team to find out what we needed to talk about. So all of those are things that a sales leader can do to begin to develop their people, and then they can assess from a skill set standpoint what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, what are the developmental opportunities. Tons of sales meetings. So there are opportunities for that person to get up and present, talk about why they're doing well, put together a deck, all of those things that a manager would do. So those are internal opportunities that a manager can use to begin to assess the skill sets of their top salespeople to figure out, is this a person that we should be looking at promoting? And in some cases, you may have somebody that's a middle performer, that maybe they're over 100%, maybe they're 101, 102%, and they exhibit all those skills that it would take to be a manager. Maybe that's the person that should be promoted to a sales manager. I mean, Bill Belichick never played football, and we all think of him as one of the greatest coaches ever in football. So maybe it's not as much you need to have played the game, or you need to have done the thing, so to speak, but you need to have the skill sets to be a strong manager, and maybe it shouldn't all be it's our number one salesperson or it's our top 10%. maybe the talent pool should go a little deeper than that.
Yes. So much to say, and I hope Belichick doesn't ruin his legacy at UNC.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll just put that there. A few things there. So one is not only do love your examples, giving them real opportunities to not only test them out, but get them to test out the role. Because they may be like, I don't want to go create these texts.
Yes.
God, let me go do something else. That's not it, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's also important. I've talked about this before, and I love that you talked about this in sales specifically, that it could be people just meeting expectations. They're doing their job. Don't overlook them,
Yeah.
right? Those are,
Exactly.
don't count them out. Um, so the second part of that question is, let's just say a great salesperson gets into a sales leadership job and they're like, don't like it. What do you suggest they do to kind of get back to going, hey, I just want to do sales? Because it could be damaging to your career when someone promotes you and you're like, I don't like this. And it can feel like backtracking. Do you have any thoughts there?
Yeah, there's a lot there because I think there are a lot of things that could possibly be going on. I knew this is early on in my career, somebody that was a sales manager. They did well. I don't know from a behavioral standpoint, anecdotal stories I heard, don't know if they were true or not, but if people considered them the best manager, they stepped out of a managerial role and they've been in sales for the last 20 years. I don't think it hurt their career at all. I think they've had a very good career. I think you have to decide what you want to do and where you want to land. That if you look out over the next 20 or 30 years, what do you want people to say about you? Or what are the experiences that you want to have gotten? So sometimes people just don't want to be a manager, and I think that's okay. The other part of it is that it can be a sign that there's a growth and developmental opportunity, because sometimes the reason people don't like something is because they're not very good at it and they don't have the skill set. A lot of people that are looking at management from the outside, they'll look at their manager, which may not necessarily be always the best thing to do, and they think in terms of, my manager does a lot of babysitting, I don't want to do what my manager does. And so there's a perception that the job is harder than maybe it should be. And so they don't
Mhm.
want to move that step forward. And then they get in a role, and then it feels like everything that I saw and everything I thought about has been validated. But, as you learn more skill sets, you have to figure this out, from a developmental standpoint. If you get those opportunities, does the job get easier? Is it something that you like to do? And then if you make a decision that that's not what you want to do, then you can pivot. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go back into sales. There are other types of jobs that, you can go into operations, you can do training. There are other things that you can do if you have the skill set. Sometimes people get bored.
Mhm.
Uh, so you're a manager, you've been a manager for the last 10 years. Maybe you need another opportunity. Maybe it is sales, maybe it's something else. So it's a lot there. A lot of it's some self discovery. I would suggest that somebody go out and get a coach, have some conversations, and kind of peel the onion back before making that decision. But I think any decision a person makes is a right decision. We get caught up in what other people think, but we all have one life that we have to live, and ultimately you need to do what's going to make you happy. And if being in sales is what you love, nothing wrong with salespeople, because they're the ones that generate the revenue for the organization to stay in business. So that's a go for it.
Yeah, I love what you said. Every decision's a right decision, right? It doesn't matter what you make, just make a decision, right? And you can always make a different
Right.
decision if you find that
Exactly.
that's not the right one for you. So
Exactly.
I think that is great advice. So when you think about the leadership, the sales managers that you've trained and worked with over the many years that you've been or in business and working, right? Um, what separates the leaders or the managers that you see excel and continue to thrive in their career? And you can use that however you want. And then the ones that kind of stay stuck and they're just maybe stuck or backtracked.
Yeah. I think learning is a huge component. Leaders are learners, And I think that you always have to be learning. Earlier we talked a little bit about AI and figuring out how to use that tool. And I think sometimes the latest technology comes or the latest tools and resources are available, and managers don't learn how to use them, so they don't necessarily stay fresh. You have some managers, they've been in a role for 30 years, and the whisper behind the behind the lane, so to speak, is, boy, when are they going to retire? Because they're not keeping up with
Yeah.
tools and resources, refuse to either send email or use their cell phone or, do all of the things. For example, even 10, 15 years ago, we didn't text as much. So you have a new generation that does a lot more texting. So if you're a manager that's a Gen Xer or a boomer, you got to get a little bit more efficient in your texting, in providing feedback in that way. It's totally different. They'll complain about millennials and other generations. They're not wrong. It's just their generation just does different stuff. And if you're going to manage them, you've got to get on board and figure out, maybe there's some tricks that you can teach them, but you've got to meet them halfway, and it goes both ways. And you can be far more effective as a manager if you're looking to continually up your game, understand some of those things, and figure out what are things that I could be doing. So I think the managers that thrive do a better job of being able to stay up to date and constantly improving their skills, honing their skills, and then continually just looking to improve. There's that saying that if you stay still, you're going to fall behind. And I believe that's more true now than it ever has been.
So Keith, as a Gen Xer, I love a text. Like, bring it on. We don't need to talk. Just text me. I have fully adapted to that. Although I probably have too much punctuation for my Gen Alpha kid, right? And he's like, come on, mom, you need to figure out RN is right now. I'm like, all right, just all right. But yes, that adapting. And also the doctors are getting younger and younger. I'm not getting older and older, but the
Yeah.
doctors are getting younger and younger. So yes, that adapting is definitely a thing. So, Keith, if you could mentor an early sales leader over coffee tomorrow, what would you encourage them to start doing and then maybe stop doing or leaving behind?
I would say if I were mentoring a new sales leader, would be figure out the best use of your time. New managers can be overwhelmed with the amount that they have to do, and it's easy to get caught up in the reports. Somebody's calling you, I need this, I need that, the sales meetings. It's managers do everything other than spend time in the field with their representatives. When I was a manager, we were required to be in the field 120 days. Over time, that's decreased to 100, and some companies that's 75. So that gives you an idea of how much time managers don't spend coaching, providing feedback to the representatives. So I think that prioritizing and figuring out what's important is the number one thing. The second thing is become an expert at providing coaching and feedback. We talked about that earlier. Being a manager is not difficult, but it is the hardest job that you'll ever have. And part of it is because people are involved, and learning and understanding human nature becomes so key. In anything that you can do that will make you a far more effective manager. And then remember the last thing, and I alluded to it earlier, leaders lead. And what I mean by that, you need to do everything in your power to enable your team to be successful. So if your team is struggling with product knowledge, don't call sales training. Figure out how to get your people set up to be successful. If your people are struggling with sales skills across the board, you as the manager, that's your responsibility to figure out how to get the team better. No one's going to send you a lifeline. And so often managers will sit back, they'll complain, we don't have this, we don't have that. And it's, well, have you made a telephone call? What have you done? The team is looking for you to lead the team, not manage the team. And that's the difference between leadership and management. I do truly believe that effective management skills are important, and that good managers make better leaders. But at the same time, to lead, you got to be up front. You got to be out front. You got to drive the team. One adage that I learned from being in the military One of the things that the infantry theme has always been follow me. As a leader, are you worthy to follow? And and
Mhm.
and it ultimately goes back to, because leaders lead and people are going to follow you if you're a leader and you do those things that enable your team to be successful. So those are the three things that I would tell people to focus on if I were
Yeah.
mentoring a new sales manager.
I think those are all great things to consider. And I often ask new leaders, why would anyone follow you? And that kind of stumps them. Like, no, because I got a title, right?
You're right.
I'm
Yeah.
I'm a nice person. I'm like, okay, got some work here because it does. You're
Yeah.
like, I don't know. I was just given a title. I said I did. Someone told me I did a good job. Here you go. Right. So it's a lot to ponder, and it's a lot to figure out who you want to be as a leader. Right. And it takes time. It takes lots of mistakes, lots of trying things, and figuring out what kind of leader you want to be. So I think those are
Yeah. Yeah.
all good habits.
Being a being a new sales manager is like being a new sales rep.
Mm,
It's a new skill. It's a new thing. It's the developmental pathway in some ways is not that much different. Sometimes you
right.
luck into some wins and do some things well, maybe by accident, or and then you look back, so I don't know how I did that, but I'm glad I was able to learn along the way how to do this consistently and on a regular
Mhm.
basis.
Yeah. But Keith, where can people find out more about you and connect?
They can find me at coremanagementtraining.com. That's my website, or they can connect with me on LinkedIn.
I will link it all up in the show notes. But Keith, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Jen. Thanks for having me.